Hey, what's going on? It's been a long time since I did an update video, and believe it or not, it's been 10 years since I started dabbling in the video space, and it's 5 since I've been running Savage Geese as a business. And I have been through a lot like travel and projects recently, and of course, trying to figure out the business side, and I thought about the things that I've learned. So this video is like I made a list, 20 things that I've learned over the past 5 years of doing this, and I wanted to share it because I think it's my own personal insight, and there may be some benefit of sharing some information back and forth with the people that watch this and the people in the industry. Be hyper aware that, as I go through these 20 things, it's going to take a long time to get through them. And there's not going to be any B-roll or explosions or dancers in the background, so it's just a direct conversation with me and the camera. And if that's your bag, okay, let's get started. The first thing that I learned is, and I told Jack this the first time he started working with me, and when we did trips and all this, know your place. It sounds like bad in a way, but the more you know your place in terms of like business and specifically in media, if you go to a media event with 120 journalists or 120 media, and some are from big companies, some are from independents, you're all there for the same thing, you're one small piece of a big puzzle, right? And if you come in and you think that you're entitled to something because of who you are or what you've done, it doesn't typically work. And, I think it's that part of knowing where you fit in with it, sometimes flying under the radar, sometimes not, sometimes just being honest. I've had a chance to talk, just out of chance, talking to a chief engineer of a sports car, and he, never met him before, and he was just telling me his disappointment with media in general. And the first thing I said to him, I just got a vibe that he was just not, he found out what we were doing, and it bothered him. What he had been through. And I just, instantly, I'm like, you know what? I don't think enough people are honest about what we do. Everything that we do has people behind it. Like a car or product has a huge team. Sometimes it's thought out, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a win, sometimes it's a lose. But in the case of this, I just told him, look, most of us have never designed a car before, product planned a car, never worked in manufacturing, never worked for an automotive company yet. We have opinions. But we need to be honest about that and show the respect where the respect needs to go. And there's that level of transparency that's not there, and I think that's where it's know your place, be honest about it. And I think that type of attitude helps to change the dynamic and shift things around quite a bit. And it does go a long way, a longer way than I ever thought that it would. And it helps you to assimilate with certain people much quicker. Nobody likes an entitled asshole, smug person that's like, me. We joke around about it a lot. Let's talk about me, which essentially what this video is anyway. So let's get on to number 2. Long term, it's more important to be respected than liked. It's kind of a philosophy of mine. And, that doesn't mean you should be a jerk. But typically, if you're playing the long game, you're not going to get everybody to like you. Yes, you can flip people, but overall, if you're working hard and you're well respected and you're not screwing around and you have decent morals, values, scruples, and you have some level of integrity, people are going to respect you and want to work with you again. And that's something. Before I really got into this, when you work in teams, right, in groups of people. And I saw even on the filmmaking side, a lot of film crews and the way that this stuff works is they just pick the same people over and over that they can trust. They may not have personal relationships, but people love the confidence of knowing when you work with somebody, they're gonna do what they said they were gonna do, that you can count on them and not babysit them. And I think that's the part of respect that's hyper important that I downplayed maybe when I was younger. I was more worried about being liked. Oh, people think I'm cool, But you can like somebody and not respect them. That's the funny part. You can like somebody, but you would never trust them to do the job, and that's what how that's essentially my point. Number 3, know that not everyone is going to be on the same page and harbor a unifying atmosphere. One thing I learned is negativity. Now that I've been doing this, there's a lot of positivity about the stuff that we do. Mostly if you are in an echo chamber on the YouTube comments, there's very little negative stuff. It's great. People are engaged. It's a community. But the thing is it definitely weeds out the negative stuff too. Like there's not a lot of it. So like when I go onto Reddit and somebody posts up one of our videos, you'll get people that'll be like, I hate these guys. They're not Throttle House. They're not Top Gear. They're not Jason Camisa. They're not this, that, or Doug DeMuro. And you get into this bitch fest, and even the people that really appreciate what you're doing start attacking the people that are negative, and then the negative people like attacking the positive ones as fanboys or whatever it is. And typically those are the conversations I like to get engaged with, because the people that don't like you generally are not just there to troll. There are trolls, don't get me wrong, but they have a point. And if you can find a middle ground with people and you can have that dialogue where there's some level of mutual respect built between two people with opposing views, that person that can cause great deal of difficulty can also can essentially not get on your side, but have a better appreciation for what you're trying to do, and also acknowledging the fact that it's okay to speak out and say you don't like something, that you may just flat out not like it. You don't have to suppress it. That's the whole point of communication and learning from people. I think, before, there's a difference between hate and criticism, right? And I think we try to shut out criticism way too much. We don't listen to it because we don't like it. But I've really leaned into it a lot. I'm not saying like trolls, but I'm saying, if I can learn something and I can do something better, and that's the first thing I ask, what would you do if you were in my position? What would you do better? And not like in Jack's video where he's chasing Patrick Long on the track and he's got a huge gap between Patrick Long. You're going to have a huge gap between Patrick Long when you're driving behind him. Again, it's like some of it you have to read between the lines. Where do you pick your battles, and where do you actually try to engage with people that are passionate like you? Number 4 is you have to evolve and not get complacent. And, I've had this conversation with other people that are doing the same stuff as us. It's easy to get on and actually relationships are like this too, the comfort cycle of just getting too comfortable, and you forget to do the little things you need to do, or to evolve, to push the limits, to push yourself, because what you've been doing is working, but it's not always going to work. It's like taking the same drive every single day, the same way, the same speed. It gets old. People get tired of things. And if you're not really putting that effort in to evolve, you stagnate. And that's always something that I'm hyper concerned about, and something that I've been focusing more and more as the scope of some of these projects get bigger. Not everything's going to be a home run. Not everything's going to be different. But if at least you're trying different things, people really are receptive to that. So I think that's one of the things that I've learned most this year as well, this past couple of years. Number 5 is there's no magic formula to success. You trade off short-term success for long-term success. If I took 100 people watching this video and we sat down in a room and said, how would you make a viral video? I think most people would say the same thing. It would have to be inflammatory. It would have to have cats, memes, nudity, a drag race. Like it's very easy to try to formulate something that's going to get a lot of views. But the thing is what that does to do that doesn't last. It's constantly changing. So it's easier to trade off the long-term goal by trying to chase the short-term gain of like being, whatever it is, like trying to get the immediate gratification of big numbers. And I've learned there's no point in doing that, really. If you want to do this and you want to be passionate about it, it's best just to stay the course and work on that formulation of like long term. The next one is number 6, which is also really tied into that. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing unless you plan on just being a copycat. If you know what you're set out to do and you know what you're good at, you focus on that, and everything else should fade into the background, and you should not let what other people do dictate your path unless there is a really good reason why you need to adapt. Number 7 is it's not easy. It takes time, patience, and money to grow. And this is true, like you need a lot of patience to do anything, to be successful with anything. As soon as you lose your patience for something, you immediately go in a hole. You're not effective. And you have to be prepared, or at least that's what I've learned. I have to be patient and I have to be prepared that I'm going to lose money sometimes. Not all the time, because then I wouldn't be doing this, but sometimes I get so hung up on it that I lost money or lost a lot of money, and I don't want to do it, but that's part of like the risk and reward of doing some of this stuff. But again, a lot of it has to do with patience. Stay the course. Number 8 is don't chase dead ends. Work with people who find value in what you do. If it's not a two-way street, don't go there. There's always going to be people that are not as passionate about you or don't care about the same things as you do. And this goes in relationships and everything, but this is one thing I've tried to tell Jack, and I've learned more and more. When you work on a project with a team of people that want to be there and do it, it's so much easier than chasing a bunch of people that don't want to do something, or you're forcing them to do it and they have to do more work and they're not prepared to do it. Certain people just want to punch a clock. Certain people don't care about the same things you do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you try to force those people into your way of doing things, it's going to be a shit show. And that's the thing. Like, probably most people have worked in a team where you could be one of those people that don't want to put a lot of work in. Let's just get this done and over with. Why are we going above and beyond? We're not rewarded for this. Or you're one of those people that is like trying to drive forward, wants to work hard, really passionate about it, and then you're trying to pull these people along that don't want to do it. They just want to do the bare minimum, and it's frustrating on both sides, of course. So it's about finding people that you work with that value the same thing, and then in case of us, like we want to work with manufacturers that value what we do. And if they don't, and they don't want to be a part of that, it's okay. Just let it go. There's other things we can do. There's other things they can do. You know what I mean? It's basically not forcing the issue. Number 9 is learn when to say no and know your limits. And this is something that I've had to do this year because I'm having close to a mental breakdown with the amount of hours and travel and all these things and the amount of pressure. And I'm one of those people that some of the ways that I survive in life is my ability and drive to work and work hard. That sense of accomplishment helps to wash over some of the other issues that I have. However, that drive is also a double-edged sword, and it's about saying no to things. It's okay. Like if you're getting sick or you're not mentally well, what good is the money? What good is the project if you're hating life so much? So I've had to learn to say no to a lot of things. And sometimes I feel bad about it. But most of the time, I would rather wake up with a sense that I want to get out of bed and I want to work on what I'm working on versus just like feeling like everything's sitting on your chest. The next thing is number 10. This is really important. We just had a conversation with some of our reps about this. Don't be reactive. It's really hard in this era. Like if I see something, oh my God, it would be so amazing just to type this or post this or be like sarcastic about this, or even maybe make a video because I know a lot of people will react to it. Don't be reactive, especially if it's at the expense of someone else, someone's business, or something that you don't really understand or have the explanation to. It becomes addictive. I mean, we've seen it in politics, we've seen it in sports, we've seen it in media. People go off half-cocked all the time, and it has an effect. So if you're looking to again, like for me, I'm looking to play the long game. You don't want to just type the first thing you think. Sometimes it's like you type something out like da, 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 and you're like, I've learned to just stop and not do that. It's really hard. Number 11 is always make an effort to understand the other side of things. Play to your strengths and understand your own weaknesses. This is about relating to other people. Like you really have to understand what other people want and what they value, what's important to them, and not you. That's how you make connections, right? Like I can sit there and ramble about myself all day long, and people are going to tune out. Like you have to find a commonality with people. And some of the things that we do, and this is really important with people that watch videos that are into cars, I'm not going to like the same car you do. I may hate your car, but if I sit there and just rant at you, you're going to be like, what is wrong with this guy? Like there's a commonality to be found. And that's what I've learned. Like, the more you can connect with people on a human level, on a business level, and find some mutual connection, the farther you get. And that's one of the most satisfying experiences that I've had, is like people that are just literally get it, and I get them, and I can just say what I want to somebody and they get it, and I get them, and it's like clean. If you don't, and you're not receptive to that, and you're constantly trying to force your will on people, or you're not listening. Learn to listen more versus just talk at somebody. Again, it's like, sounds simple, but it gets hard when you're in an opinionated world and industry. The next thing is number 12, don't be your own worst enemy. And that's essentially the same thing, right? Like, there's times where it goes to being reactive, it goes to saying things or doing things to sabotage yourself and your own success. And it's easy to do for what would feel good in the moment. And sometimes that is being crazy or being stupid or saying something, or saying something that might even be inappropriate to somebody to get a reaction, or to get in a fight, or to pick a fight, or troll somebody. It's about knowing that sometimes it's not worth doing that, and to take a step back, which goes into number 13, which Jack did to me recently. He's like, I'm like, what do you want me to, I said, what do you want me to do? And he's like, just shut the fuck up. And it was related to business. It wasn't me talking to him. He's like, just, all you have to do is keep your mouth shut. And like, I still believe in what I said was right, but it didn't need to be said. And that's part of the biggest, hardest part in life, is just, if you're not really affecting change, and you're not doing something that's going to have a positive effect on the scenario or the outcome, or your opinion isn't really needed or not asked for, just shut up. Just don't go there, because you can move on from it into something where you can have a greater effect. And that's really hard to do. It's one of the hardest things for me, because, I am passionate about certain things, and I again, it's about forcing your opinions on other people instead of listening. It's a lot of work, part of this process. Number 14 is don't go broke chasing big projects. And this is something I've had to really have serious discussions with Jack, because he looks at it from the business side. Some of these big projects are amazing, right? You get access to people, things, cars that you wouldn't, but the scope of them costs so much money that you go broke doing it. Like, so I'm really desperately trying to find out the middle ground without losing thousands of dollars on every single video that we do. Because, once you start from the business side, which obviously I'm more of a creative type, when you look at the business side of fuel cost, time, materials, labor costs, transportation, rental, cameras, blah, 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 when you add all that up, and it looks cool, oh, look at these cars, and look at all the stuff we did, and you're spending 3 weeks or 2 weeks to make one video, and you're not getting paid to make that video. Like, literally, I've had to have these talks and really be real about the fact that this will not continue. I will be broke if we continue down this path. While it is amazing to do these, it's not possible to continue that way. There's just not the money in it, right? Like, there's not the money to produce certain things like this, even with a lean team that is pretty adept. So you have to be smart, and I've had to learn how to be smarter about doing some of this. I don't know what number I'm on. Let's just say I'm on number 15 is have an end game personally and on the business side. And I knew what my personal end game was, but I wasn't really sure where I was taking this with the business, because there's no playbook. Now I feel like I'm more focused, and everybody says like, oh, what's your business plan? What do you want to achieve? Sometimes that's not easy. Sometimes after you do something for a while, you don't even know what you're doing anymore. You're just on autopilot. And I'm not saying I'm on autopilot, but I'm reaching the peak of what I intended to do when I set out to do this. Like, I'm actually just finished 2 projects that was my goal when I started this personally. And once I achieved those, I'm like, what do I do? Do I quit this? Because now I've done what I always wanted to do. Do I hang it up after that because I don't have anything left, a personal goal? But even though I haven't reached my business goal, it's really hard. And that's one of the things I'm struggling with right now. Number 16 is it's okay to question and be critical if you know what you're talking about and you're coming from a place of like integrity. I feel okay with being critical and being negative about certain things now for certain people and certain things because I think there's a better way to do it. I think there's a way where you can help improve and make things better if it's warranted. When we're talking about product, they're flawed, right? Because they're made by people. They're never going to be perfect. People are not perfect. Things are not perfect. So I think there's always an opportunity to be honest about how to improve things. It goes back to the discussion I said earlier about somebody coming out and saying, well, I don't like you. Okay, why? You know, when you get into that discussion, you really peel back the layers, there's a lot to be learned from that. And I think I'm okay with doing it. And a lot of the people and the brands that I've talked to, if you know what you're talking about and it's coming from a place of not just trashing something to trash it, it's the best thing because there's a lot of people that can learn from it. And I feel better, I feel less guilty about doing it, especially this past year from talking to a lot of the brands that are like, you know, we appreciate you talking about this stuff. Yeah, it kind of stings some of it because it's very snide or it's sarcastic, but there's that piece of it that they're listening to. And I've actually gotten better at being critical and helpful without just being inflammatory. Number 18 is numbers are misleading. Don't get nuts over them. And this is a tough one because metrics are what drives business, right? And analytics. If you go and you pitch a project to somebody and you're like, I want to do this and I need X amount of budget, they're going to be like, well, prove it to me. Then you have to go through the numbers game to get that allocated. And if you can't prove it, there's no business case to get money to do something. On the flip side is not everything. If all we did was base things around numbers, then we would have soulless, everything would potentially be soulless. Sometimes you have to take a risk and do things that are not based on numbers, that are based from the heart. And some of those projects are, some of those things that you create off of that are the best things you've ever done. And they may not make the money and they may not have the overall numbers to back them up. But those once in a while things are part of doing this, and that's really what makes me passionate. It's finding that balance between chasing numbers and then just doing what you really love to do, regardless sometimes. Number 19 is understanding the space that you compete in and knowing what people are doing around you. You have to be aware of what's going on around you, and you wouldn't believe some of the people that we talk to that are so insulated and siloed and in their own bubble because their jobs they don't allow them to get out and experience certain things. They have to do it on their own time and they don't have the time to do it. Like if you're making a product specifically, you really should have access to the most things possible, understand what the mindset is around everything, because it really does help focus you on the things that maybe you're already good at and improving them and seeing what other people are doing better to potentially boost your motivation to like work harder. And that's part of like getting better at something. You can't just put the blinders on and like, hey, we're this or I'm this. I know everything, because we don't. There's somebody more talented. There's always going to be somebody better than you. And I really take that approach. And I know it's kind of a dire approach. Like that's not, it doesn't sound like, sounds like you got low self-esteem or low self-worth, but really it's true. Like every industry I've ever worked in, there's somebody smarter, better, faster than me. Like I may have a broad knowledge, but there's always somebody that knows more and I want to learn from that person. So that's one of the things that I've learned this year specifically is don't get so hyper-focused on what you're doing. What can I learn from other people? Number 20, and I know I probably skipped one, this is more of a life lesson. And I've been pretty good about this. In this video is teetering on it, but don't overshare or get personal. Tread carefully on topics of politics, religion, and of course, social issues, right? And I think this is really hard with social media and people overshare personal information way too much. And as soon as you get into the political stuff, in religious stuff, and thank God, like, well, actually, no, cars can be religious for people. But you know, it's about trying to find a commonality, right? Like we're really divided. We're divided in so many ways. So just because I feel this way or I have this belief or I'm this, skin color or a socioeconomic bracket or I believe this, that doesn't mean you can't find commonality with people, but you have to tread very carefully and you have to be very, very open to hearing and listening. And for me, that's something that I've spent a lot of time over the past 2 years is trying to get people together versus dividing people over issues. And some of that is just knowing when, again, not to say anything. Doesn't mean I don't care or I don't have beliefs on it, but sometimes just saying something creates a divide. And it's about being smart enough to know when to engage and when not to engage. But anyway, that's the 20 things. And I know this is a long video, but I really appreciate it. And I'd appreciate if you shared some of the knowledge that you had or your feedback about how you've seen things progress, at least on this side, and maybe in the media as a whole, in the automotive space specifically, and engineering. Again, thank you for everybody's time and in everybody's support on the business side, the viewership side, and of course the Patreon side. Thanks again.